He gon' need another plan. Dead ass a motherfucker. Still come through fucking swearing. Nigga, out the roof up in this bitch. Who said I was weird? I get shit like baby.
Yes, Marie, throughout the day, a lot of people have told me that they're still in shock about the tragic homicide that happened Tuesday that took the lives of the two women, Deja Morris and Sequoia Lamar.
They were young, vibrant, and full of life. Sequoia Lamar and Deja Morris had built something special, an unbreakable bond that played out on social media, where thousands followed their love story. But on a quiet morning in Huntsville, Alabama, that love story was violently cut short. The reason? A petty disagreement over car tires. It started as nothing more than an argument between neighbors. But within seconds, 13 gunshots shattered the morning stillness, leaving Sequoia and Deja lifeless outside their apartment. The man responsible, a neighbor they had clashed with just days earlier. When police arrived, the suspect was already gone, vanishing without a trace. What followed was a desperate manhunt spanning multiple states as law enforcement raced to track down the shooter before he could disappear forever. How did a minor dispute escalate to such a brutal crime? Why did 23-year-old Tydeshun Stevens react with deadly force? And could this tragedy have been prevented? These are the questions we're breaking down today. Here we explore the crimes that shook the world, from high-profile murder trials to cold cases that still haunt investigators. If you're fascinated by the twisted minds behind unthinkable acts, you've come to the right place. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let's uncover the truth behind the tragedy of Sequoia Lamar and Deja Morris. But before we begin, do you think conflicts like this can be resolved before they turn deadly? Let me know in the comments. Who were Sequoia and Deja? 1,000 words. To their growing online audience, Sequoia Lamar and Deja Morris were more than content creators. They were an embodiment of love, laughter, and ambition. Their relationship played out in real time through social media, where thousands followed their journey. They were a perfect balance. Sequoia, the energetic and creative dancer, and Deja, the funny and charismatic storyteller. But before the cameras, before the viral videos, they were just two young women chasing their dreams, working hard to build a future. Their love story, their rise to online fame, and the tragic way it all ended, every part of it resonated deeply with those who knew them and those who simply admired them from afar. Sequoia Lamar, 20, the rising star from Huntsville. Born and raised in Huntsville, Alabama, Sequoia Lamar was a natural performer. From an early age, she had a gift. Whether it was dancing, styling hair, or simply making people smile, she poured her soul into everything she did. Sequoia had built a name for herself as a talented hairstylist and an exceptional dancer. She took pride in her craft, showcasing intricate braiding techniques on YouTube while mesmerizing audiences with high-energy dance routines on TikTok. Every move she made was filled with passion, and it wasn't long before people took notice. Her mother, Shamika, described her as a bright, caring young woman who always put family first. She had dreams of growing her brand, expanding her skills beyond social media, and possibly opening her own business one day. But she wasn't just ambitious. She was kind, fun-loving, and had an energy that made people want to be around her. For Sequoia, social media wasn't just about gaining followers. It was about self-expression. She wanted to inspire others through her art, and in many ways, she already had. But life had more in store for her, because not long after she began making a name for herself online, she met someone who would change her world forever. Deja Morris, 24, the charismatic influencer from Birmingham. Deja Morris had the kind of personality that could light up a room. Originally from Birmingham, Alabama, she eventually made her way to Huntsville, drawn by new opportunities and a desire for something bigger. Unlike Sequoia, who focused on her dance and beauty content, Deja had a different strength: storytelling. She was witty, hilarious, and had a way of making even the most ordinary moments feel entertaining. Her brother, Dante, referred to her as the star of the family. She had a magnetic presence, a natural ability to make people laugh, and a way of turning everyday life into an experience worth sharing. When Deja and Sequoia met, their connection was instant. They didn't just fall in love, they became a team. And together, they took social media by storm.
She was like our Michael Jackson, you know. She was the star of the family. She was the star of the Fab Five, you know. She's a family-oriented person. So is Sequoia as well. They were both bubbly, goofy, funny little girls, you know.
Sequoia and Deja's relationship wasn't just about love. It was about genuine friendship, partnership, and shared ambition. They weren't afraid to be themselves in front of the camera, and that authenticity drew people in. On TikTok and YouTube, they documented their relationship with pranks, challenges, dance routines, and heartfelt moments. Their followers loved watching their bond unfold, the inside jokes, the spontaneous adventures, the real-life highs and lows. They had something rare, something people admired. They were also incredibly family-oriented. While they had no children, they spent countless hours with loved ones, making memories, celebrating milestones, and surrounding themselves with those who mattered most. But behind the laughter and the growing success, they were just two young women trying to build a life together. They had plans, dreams, and a future that seemed full of possibilities. Until everything changed. No one could have predicted what would happen on August 29, 2023. A petty dispute over car tires, something so insignificant, escalated into something deadly. This crime took place in Huntsville, Alabama, a city known for its rapid growth, deep ties to space exploration, and southern charm. Often called the Rocket City because of its connection to NASA, Huntsville is a place of innovation and opportunity. But like any city beneath the surface, tensions can rise in unexpected ways. Sequoia and Deja called Huntsville home. They lived in an apartment complex on Bonnell Drive, an area that should have been a safe place for them to build their future. Instead, it became the site of their final moments. In just seconds, 13 bullets were fired. Sequoia and Deja lay motionless outside their apartment, their lives stolen in an instant. News of their deaths sent shockwaves through their online community. Fans couldn't believe it. One moment, they were watching their favorite couple post content about their daily lives. The next, they were gone. Social media erupted with grief. Friends, family, and strangers flooded their pages with messages of heartbreak, disbelief, and anger. How could something so trivial turn so violent? How did a simple disagreement end with two young women losing their futures? Their story became a painful reminder of how fragile life is. They had their whole lives ahead of them, but one moment of unchecked anger changed everything. The question now was why? And could this have been prevented?
It's been 1 month since two women were shot and killed on Bonnell Drive in North Huntsville, 24-year-old Deja Morris and 20-year-old Sequoia Lamar. Police arrested the suspect in their murder tied to Sean Stevens and Anniston the following week.
Wait 31's Maddie McCaffrey joins us live now after speaking exclusively with the victims' families today.
Yeah, Dan, Nicole, it's been a devastating time for these families, and it was tragic when they got the news that Deja Morris and Sequoia Lamar were shot and killed. It happened Tuesday, August 29th, just after 10 a.m.
For most people, neighborly disputes are nothing more than minor inconveniences, an argument over a parking spot, a complaint about loud music, or frustration over shared spaces. They happen every day and usually end with an annoyed sigh, a forced apology, and life moving on. But for Sequoia Lamar and Deja Morris, what started as a seemingly trivial disagreement escalated into something unthinkable. Their neighbor, Ty Deshaun Stevens, 23, wasn't just another resident in their Huntsville apartment complex. He was someone they had encountered before, and their relationship with him had been tense for days leading up to the fatal morning of August 29, 2023. While the exact nature of Stevens' grievances remains unclear, what is known is that they revolve around something as petty as car tires, a disagreement so minor that it makes what happened next all the more incomprehensible. The dispute wasn't a one-time incident. It had been brewing for days, gradually intensifying into something far more hostile than anyone could have predicted. Witnesses later reported that Stevens had exchanged words with Sequoia and Deja multiple times, their arguments growing more heated with each encounter. It's unclear whether the dispute was about a parking space, a misplaced tire, or damage to a vehicle, but whatever it was, it had struck a nerve with Stevens. As tensions grew, did anyone see the warning signs? Were there moments when someone could have stepped in to de-escalate the situation? Hindsight often makes it easy to pinpoint moments of danger, but in real time, conflicts can seem trivial until they aren't. Neighbors would later recall hostile exchanges in the complex's parking area, raised voices, and an atmosphere that felt tense but not necessarily dangerous. What no one could have predicted was that Stevens wasn't just angry, he was prepared to act on it. The morning started like any other in the Bonnell Drive apartment complex. Residents went about their routines, some heading to work, others still in bed. unaware that within minutes, their peaceful morning would be shattered by the sound of gunfire. At 10:40 a.m., witnesses reported loud, rapid shots, 13 in total, ripping through the air. Within seconds, Sequoia and Deja lay lifeless near their apartment, their bodies riddled with bullets. The argument that had once been just words had now escalated into cold-blooded murder. Some residents rushed to call 911, while others watched in horror from their windows, frozen by the sheer brutality of what had just unfolded. The sound of footsteps, Stevens fleeing the scene, was the last thing some neighbors remembered before the area fell eerily silent.
New at 4, we are learning more about 2 women shot and killed in a North Huntsville apartment complex. Police actively hunting for that killer.
WAAY 31's Maddie McCaffrey joins us live from Bonnell Drive this afternoon. And Maddie, you've spent the day talking with a lot of people who knew the victims.
Yes, Marie, throughout the day, a lot of people have told me that they're still in shock about the tragic homicide that happened Tuesday that took the lives of the 2 women, Deja Morris and Sequoia Lamar. One neighbor who grabbed...
Law enforcement arrived within minutes, but the damage had already been done. The scene they encountered was one of absolute devastation. 2 young women, full of life just moments before, now lay motionless on the ground. Investigators noted that both victims had sustained multiple gunshot wounds, indicating Stevens had fired deliberately and with deadly intent. There was no hesitation, no warning shot, just a calculated act of violence that ended 2 promising lives. Neighbors, still in shock, were unable to process what they had just witnessed. Why had Stevens escalated things to such a horrifying degree? What had made him believe that murder was the only solution to a petty argument? As the reality of what had happened sank in, the grief and disbelief spread beyond just the apartment complex. News of the murder quickly made its way to Sequoia and Deja's families, who were left grappling with a pain no parent, sibling, or loved one should ever have to endure. Social media exploded with tributes and heartbreak. Fans who had followed the couple's journey, who had laughed at their pranks, supported their love, and admired their talents, now found themselves mourning them. The videos they had once enjoyed now felt like echoes of a life stolen too soon. The senselessness of it all left people searching for answers. Why had a minor disagreement spiraled into this? Could anything have been done to prevent it? As law enforcement worked to track down Stevens, the community tried to make sense of the unimaginable. This wasn't just a crime. It was a reminder of how quickly tempers can turn lethal.
Dan Nickel, it's been a devastating time for these families, and it was tragic when they got the news that Deja Morris and Sequoia Lamar were shot and killed. It happened Tuesday, August 29th, just after 10 a.m. Deja Morris's brother answered a devastating call that no one should have to receive.
Nobody believed it. Like, when she called me and she told me that they found Dee passed away and Sequoia passed away, it didn't register in my head up until we saw Facebook and there was a live on Facebook of their bodies on the floor. Yeah, so it was kind of hard to find out that way.
It's been a painful month for the Morris family as they deal with the painful reality of never seeing their loved one again.
She was like our Michael Jackson, you know? She was the star of the family. She was the star of the Fab Five, you know? She's a family-oriented person. So was Sequoia as well. They were both bubbly, goofy, funny little girls, you know?
Sequoia Lamar's mother says it's been an incredibly difficult time for their family.
Me and my family, my boys, mother, dad, husband, everybody, we suffered a great loss. We really just trying to pick up the pieces since the funeral and everything. It's been really hard and a tough struggle dealing with this.
King says her and her daughter were very close.
Very talented. She was very sweet, and her and her friend Deja did not deserve this. And I just ask for you guys to keep us in prayer, and I just want justice for my daughter and Deja as well.
As the reality of what had happened sank in, the grief and disbelief spread beyond just the apartment complex. News of the murder quickly made its way to Sequoia and Deja's families, who were left grappling with a pain no parent, sibling, or loved one should ever have to endure. Social media exploded with tributes and heartbreak. Fans who had followed the couple's journey, who had laughed at their pranks, supported their love, and admired their talents, now found themselves mourning them. The videos they had once enjoyed now felt like echoes of a life stolen too soon. The senselessness of it all left people searching for answers. Why had a minor disagreement spiraled into this? Could anything have been done to prevent it? As law enforcement worked to track down Stevens, the community tried to make sense of the unimaginable. This wasn't just a crime. It was a reminder of how quickly tempers can turn lethal. The Huntsville Police Department quickly issued an urgent warrant for Stevens' arrest, classifying him as armed and dangerous. Given the brutal nature of the crime, executing 2 unarmed women over a minor dispute, authorities treated him as a serious public threat. The case escalated beyond a local investigation, triggering a multi-state manhunt. Flyers with Stevens' name and face spread across Alabama, warning civilians not to engage with him under any circumstances. The U.S. Marshals joined the hunt, tracking potential leads in surrounding cities and states. Investigators knew that if he wasn't caught quickly, he could blend into another community, or worse, strike again. Despite his name being plastered across the news and social media, Stevens evaded capture for a full week. Where he went during that time remains unclear, but law enforcement suspected he had help. Was he hiding with friends or family? Did he have a plan to escape the state? These questions swirled as police tightened their net around him. After 7 days on the run, Stevens' luck ran out. On September 5, 2023, U.S. Marshals received a critical tip that led them to Anniston, Alabama, 90 miles south of Huntsville. There, in a quiet residential neighborhood, he was hiding in an acquaintance's home. Authorities wasted no time. Marshals, assisted by local police, swiftly surrounded the property, sealing off all possible exits. This time, there would be no escape. Stevens had no choice. He surrendered without resistance. Witnesses later described the arrest as shockingly uneventful, considering the brutality of his crime. There was no struggle, no standoff, just the end of a fugitive's desperate attempt to evade justice. Once in handcuffs, he was transported back to Huntsville, where he would face the full weight of the law. With Stevens behind bars, the next chapter of the case began, securing justice for Sequoia and Deja. Prosecutors moved swiftly, charging him with 2 counts of capital murder. In Alabama, capital murder is one of the most serious charges a person can face. If convicted, Stevens could receive life in prison without the possibility of parole or even the death penalty. Given the circumstances of the crime, a senseless, execution-style killing over something as trivial as a tire dispute, many legal experts believe prosecutors will push for the harshest possible sentence. As of March 2025, Stevens remains incarcerated without bond, awaiting his trial set for August 2025. While he sits in a jail cell, the families of Sequoia and Deja continue to grieve, waiting for justice to be served. Their deaths left an irreplaceable void, not just in their families, but in the lives of thousands of followers who had watched their journey unfold online. Now all eyes are on the courtroom, where their story will find its final chapter. Sequoia Lamar and Deja Morris never expected that a small argument over car tires would be the last conflict of their lives. But their story is far from unique. Across the country, petty disputes between neighbors have escalated into deadly encounters, fueled by unchecked rage, easy access to firearms, and a lack of effective conflict resolution. From parking space arguments that end in gunfire to noise complaints that spiral into stabbings, seemingly minor disagreements can quickly turn fatal. The question is, why do these disputes escalate to the point of no return? Tragic neighbor disputes like this one are shockingly common. Studies have found that more than 1 in 4 homicides in the U.S. stem from personal disputes, including conflicts between neighbors. Firearms are involved in over 70% of these killings, turning what might have been a shouting match into a deadly confrontation. An estimated 60% of Americans have had some kind of conflict with a neighbor, whether over property lines, noise complaints, parking, or other daily annoyances. While most disputes don't end in tragedy, a growing number do, especially when guns are involved. Experts believe that rising tensions, unresolved conflicts, and impulsive decision-making play major roles in these violent escalations. But in many cases, one key factor tips the scale from argument to homicide: access to firearms. Had Stevens not been armed that day, would Sequoia and Deja still be alive? Would the argument over tires have just ended in frustration instead of bloodshed? Studies show that the presence of a firearm drastically increases the chances of a violent dispute turning fatal. In fact, a person with a gun is 5 times more likely to escalate a conflict into a deadly shooting than someone without one. In states with high gun ownership rates, neighbor and domestic disputes are more likely to end in homicide. Research suggests that even law-abiding individuals are more likely to make impulsive, deadly decisions when a gun is readily accessible. Firearms don't just end conflicts, they remove the possibility of resolution. The moment a gun is drawn, the argument is no longer about winning or losing, it's about life and death. The most frustrating part of cases like this is that they often could have been prevented. What if there had been a community mediation program to step in before tensions boiled over? Or what if Stevens had access to anger management or conflict resolution services? What if stronger laws had kept a gun out of his hands? While there are no guarantees, experts agree that many of these murders are avoidable. Prevention starts with recognizing warning signs, de-escalating conflicts before they explode, and ensuring that those prone to violence don't have access to firearms. One solution to stopping these senseless killings lies in mediation programs, community services designed to help neighbors resolve disputes before they turn deadly. In some cities, mediation specialists help people work through arguments before law enforcement is involved. These programs have been shown to reduce violent disputes by up to 30% in neighborhoods where tensions run high, prevent future conflicts by providing long-term solutions rather than temporary fixes, lower emergency calls to law enforcement, freeing up resources for more serious crimes. Had Sequoia, Deja, and Stevens been given a neutral space to air their grievances and find a peaceful solution, this tragedy might have been avoided. While much of the focus is on the argument itself, some have questioned whether Stevens' actions were an isolated snap decision or the result of deeper issues. Some experts believe that individuals who resort to deadly violence over minor disputes may have a history of unchecked aggression. Did Stevens have a history of violent behavior? Or were there prior incidents that suggested he was dangerous? Did he struggle with anger issues that went unnoticed? Unfortunately, in many cases like this, the warning signs are ignored until it's too late. Had there been interventions before the conflict, could this have been stopped? This case also reignites a broader debate. Should there be stricter firearm regulations, especially for individuals with violent tendencies? Gun rights advocates argue that self-defense is a fundamental right and that restricting firearms won't stop violent individuals from committing crimes. However, critics of lax gun laws point to cases like this, where an everyday argument turned into a double murder simply because a gun was present. Some proposed solutions include stronger background checks to prevent firearms from falling into the wrong hands, laws preventing individuals with violent pasts from owning firearms, waiting periods for gun purchases to reduce impulsive acts of violence. While no law can fully prevent crime, data suggests that states with stricter gun laws have lower rates of violent neighbor disputes ending in homicide. Sequoia and Deja's story is tragic, not just because of how they died, but because it never should have happened. They were young women with promising futures, taken far too soon over something so incredibly petty. Their loss serves as a reminder that petty conflicts can become deadly when rage and firearms mix. Mediation and conflict resolution programs could prevent similar tragedies. Stronger laws could help keep deadly weapons out of the hands of those prone to violence. Most importantly, their deaths should not be in vain. If this case can spark conversations about how to prevent senseless killings in the future, then perhaps some small justice can be found amid the tragedy. One moment, Sequoia Lamar and Deja Morris were going about their morning, living their lives like any other day. The next, they were gone. Their dreams, their future, and their love story ended in an instant. This case is a stark reminder of how fragile life can be. A dispute that could have been solved with a conversation instead ended in cold-blooded murder. No one wakes up expecting their life to be cut short over something as trivial as a disagreement over car tires, yet here we are. Sequoia and Deja weren't involved in any criminal activity. They weren't living recklessly. They were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, facing the wrong person. And that's the terrifying reality. Violence doesn't always come from enemies or criminals lurking in the shadows. Sometimes it's the people next door. Many murders aren't premeditated. They aren't the result of elaborate criminal plots. They're impulsive, driven by rage, and fueled by poor decision-making. This case proves how unresolved anger can lead to irreversible destruction. Could Ty Stevens have walked away that morning instead of pulling the trigger? Yes. Could he have chosen a different way to handle his frustration? Absolutely. Could this entire tragedy have been avoided if someone intervened? Without a doubt. The problem is we live in a society where emotions escalate far too quickly and people resort to violence instead of seeking solutions. Stevens didn't just take 2 lives, he destroyed his own future in the process. Now, instead of living freely, he faces capital murder charges, a possible death sentence, and a lifetime of regret. And for what? A petty grudge? A minor inconvenience? This case serves as a devastating example of what happens when anger is left unchecked. Sequoia and Deja's deaths cannot be undone, but their story can serve a greater purpose. This case raises serious questions about gun safety, community intervention, and conflict resolution. White heavy checkmark gun safety laws. Should individuals with histories of violent disputes have access to firearms? Would stricter background checks have prevented this tragedy? Should gun laws include provisions that restrict ownership for those with a record of violent altercations? There are no easy answers, but cases like this demand conversation. White heavy checkmarked community mediation programs. If a mediation service had been available in their apartment complex, could the argument have been resolved before it escalated? Should local governments invest in dispute resolution resources to prevent violence before it happens? Studies show that in communities where de-escalation programs are readily available, violent altercations drop significantly. Had there been a neutral third party to step in and help navigate this dispute, Sequoia and Deja might still be alive. This case is painful for so many reasons. 2 young lives full of potential were stolen. Their families were left to grieve the unthinkable. A petty disagreement turned into a double murder that shocked an entire community. At the end of the day, this isn't just a story about 2 victims. It's a cautionary tale, one that should make us all think twice about how we handle conflicts in our own lives. And the worst part, it was entirely preventable. What do you think could have prevented this tragedy? Should gun laws be stricter? Should more mediation services exist? Let's talk in the comments. And if you found this case eye-opening, don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep investigations into true crime here on Crime Scene Exposed.